Today I want to talk to you guys about the equipment I use to make the content on my channel, and specifically cameras. Now in this video I'm going to give you guys an overview of what I'm actually using, and then I want to talk to you about the new Panasonic Lumix S5, because I think this could actually be the perfect full frame camera upgrade for me. However, I also want to tell you why I haven't ordered one as well. So the first thing we're going to do is take a look at what equipment I'm actually using now. The main cameras I use for both my photography as well as my content making are both by Panasonic Lumix. I have a G9 which I use predominantly for my stills as well as B-roll, and then I have my Gh5 which is my main camera I make all of my content with. Both of these cameras are based on the MFT lens system, which means I've been able to invest in one lens system and use them between all of the cameras. And the nice thing about MFT is that the lenses are small and lightweight as well. Now the Gh5 for me was absolutely revolutionary, and it has been one of the best cameras I have ever had. Using that 20 megapixel sensor, it has a massive amount of recording capability. That onboard image stabilization system combined with the lenses also means that you can use it handheld or tripod mount, and you know you're going to get the best possible output that you can from it. One of the big draws for me on the Gh5 was its unlimited recording up to 4K 8-bit 60 frames a second. Add on top of that the long GOP options, the all intras, as well as the many different resolutions available and slow-mos means you are able to get the right option you need for your project. Add to that the fact that it has a full-size clean HDMI output, headphone jack and microphone makes it absolutely perfect for making content like I do. Another thing that shouldn't be underestimated on the Gh5 is just how good the menu system is on the Panasonic cameras as well. Easy to navigate, and when you need to change something quickly, you're not fumbling around to find it. Now the Gh5 itself has buttons all over it, and it has a nice layout of functions and features, as well as having that flip round screen, which means you're able to see yourself recording on the front as well. Whilst it does have a built-in electronic EV, you'll see by the fingerprint on mine it doesn't get used because this camera is purely used for video from my point of view. Then I got myself the G9 as my stills camera, and I have to say this has also been outstanding. Again, it is very similar sensor, but it is a larger camera overall with much better ergonomics aimed towards more of a still photographer. It still has that flip around screen, but if you look on mine, it is predominantly kept closed. The EV is nice and clean because that is the kind of use this camera gets, and it is the EV where I'm predominantly looking through. Overall, for me, having both the G9 for photography and the Gh5 for video has been absolutely perfect. And the nice thing with the G9 is it now doubles up as a fantastic B cam with all of the new features Panasonic have brought with the recent firmware updates, and I can run it off USB-C as well. As both these cameras are MFT, it's allowed me to invest in more lenses that are compatible with both. I have the Olympus 45mm prime, what is known as the Nifty 50 25mm Panasonic, the 12-60 f2.8, the 35-100, as well as the 100-300mm, and that's the lens I tend to use for my wildlife and stuff I need a little bit longer reach with. Overall, this set of lenses covers pretty much everything I need, and whilst there is a few upgrades I would still like to get, they do serve me very well overall. Now, of all of the lenses, my favourite is the 12-60 f2.8 Leica, and this lens is absolutely fantastic for making video content in my opinion. It has a really short minimum focus distance, and overall it just does exactly what you need a video lens to do. One thing though you do need to take into account is that it is a tromboning lens, so when you are recording things up and close, you do need to take that into account, that when you are zooming it, it is going to actually extend out. One of the other nice features of this lens is that it does have a manual focus switch as well as the switch for the onboard image stabilization. Now on the G9 for stills, I tend to use the 35-100, and this is my favourite lens for that. Overall, it has outstanding image quality and it has a good mid-range zoom. One of the nice features with many of the MFT lenses is that they have the switch for either focus and image stabilization, but you generally have the image stabilization switch on the lens directly as well, so you don't have to mess about in the menus to turn it on and off. Overall, I've been building up my MFT system over the last couple of years, and it has served me very, very well. Now, the reason I actually ended up moving to the MFT system was a couple of reasons, actually. The first was the compatibility with some of the drone gear that I have, specifically the Inspire 2, and it was very inviting for me to be able to actually buy lenses that would work both on the X5S as well as work on my photography cameras as well. Now, the reason I initially chose the Gh5 was a number of reasons, actually. I upgraded from a Canon system. I was using the 750D or the Rebel 6 or Rebel 7 Ti in the US, and I upgraded to the Gh5 for a number of reasons, specifically the unlimited recording capability, and whilst that wasn't a majorly important factor for me, it was very handy to have. The fact that it could do 4K 60 frames a second but also do 1080p 10-bit, the fact that it does have a flip around screen, the MFT lens system, which was both cheap compared to many of the other lens systems out there, but had a massive wide range of lenses available from Panasonic, Olympus, and others too. And the fact that the camera had so many pro features. Features such as the shutter angle, the waveform monitor, the programmability of the camera, clean HDMI output. And whilst I am not a pro photographer or a pro videographer, for someone that does make content like this on YouTube, it just seemed to fit the bill, and that was the reason I chose it. Then at a later time, I bought myself the Gh9, and actually I've only had the Gh9 a couple of months, and the reason I got the Gh9 was I wanted a second camera to be able to use on this system, but I wanted a better photography based camera than the Gh5 because there were some things I wasn't 100% happy with, and the fact I was having to change it all the time, I was using it in here, then I was taking it out to do my photography, I felt the G9 was a very nice upgrade compared to the Gh5, but it makes a fantastic B-roll camera now as well because of the upgraded video features they brought on it on the last firmware update. And overall, I have to say I've been extremely happy with the G9 as well. Now, just before I jump over to talking about the S5, I will mention a third camera that I have, and it is this one that I'm recording this video on, and it is a Sony a6400. Now, I actually bought that after the Gh5 but before the G9, and my original intention with that was to be my photography camera and keep using the MFT system for making content. However, I have to say I haven't really been that impressed with it. First of all, the lens I bought was the 18-105 Sony lens, and it is meant to be a really good lens for both video and photography, but it has one major limitation, and that it has a very long minimum focal distance, and that was no good for me when I was using it to make content of my channel of small things. I also really have not got on with it, and it's ended up getting regulated as a live streaming camera and a camera that I use now and again to make content. And the reason for that is I just find it all a little bit clunky. And whilst it does a fantastic job overall, the autofocus means it makes a great live streaming camera, but I just haven't felt it has worked for me, and I haven't felt I've wanted to continue to invest in this system. And that's why I actually ended up going back to MFT and buying myself a G9, because I continued then to put money into the MFT system where the lenses would be compatible on all of them. Now, whilst there are many other Sony E-mount cameras that are very interesting, this one sort of has put me off, and I'd love to give one or two of them a try, but here and now I just don't feel E-mount is for me. Now, these cameras have served me extremely well, and they've really done a fantastic job. The Gh5 has been brilliant, literally the best camera I've ever had. The G9, I've got some fantastic photos out of this. It really has done everything I've wanted to do, but I have felt a pull towards full frame for my photography. And whilst it's not something I really need for the channel, from my photography aspect, I really would like to upgrade to full frame. And I have been looking at the other options. I have had a look at the Sonys, but as I've said, this one has sort of put me off. I've had a look at the Canon offerings, and nothing has jumped off the page. Now, about 6 months ago, I spent a bit of time with the S1 from Panasonic when it released, and actually I really liked it, but it wasn't the camera for me. And the reason for that was A, it was too big, B, it was too expensive, and at the time the available range of L-mount lenses just wouldn't have suited what I was doing, and it would have meant selling everything I had to buy one compromised camera, and I just didn't feel that was the right thing to do, so I continued to invest in the MFT system. However, all of that has now changed, and this week Panasonic announced the new S5. Now, I'm not going to give you guys a review of too much of the specs or anything like that. I'd strongly suggest checking out Gerald and Dunn's video, checking out some of the Pro AV videos in the UK, because they do some fantastic comparisons compared to the Gh5, as well as DSLR video shooters video on it as well. And the new S5 for me seems the natural full frame upgrade from the Gh5. And the reason I think that is the case is this. First of all, we have it is full frame and it has image stabilization on board, but you're getting that in a package roughly the same size as the Gh5. You still have that flippy around screen. It can do 4K 60 frames a second or 50 frames a second. That is in an APS-C crop up to 10-bit with a 30-minute recording limit. However, it will do 4K 25 or 30 8-bit completely unlimited. And for me, that is absolutely fine. Most of my content today, I am still recording in 1080p. I'm actually doing this in 4K because I'm using the Sony and I thought I would give it a try, but most of the time I'm still doing content in 1080p. So 4K 30 8-bit unlimited will perfectly do everything that I want to do with it. It will do 4K 30 10-bit with a 30-minute record limit as well. If that ever became an issue for me, I could always look at attaching a Ninja and going for the raw outputs up to 5.9K or Super 35 mode DCI 4K, and that gives me a whole world of options. So frame rate wise, there's just no issues with it. It can also do 1080p up to 180 frames a second as well, which again will cover all of the slow motion needs I ever need. Add on top of that, it has a clean HDMI output. Yes, it is a micro HDMI slot, which is a bit of a pain. I don't like the micro on the Sony, but I can live with it. The fact that there are a load of new lens options been announced from Panasonic as well, all of their f1.8 primes that they've announced. The fact that it is available as well with this new 20-60 kit lens, and it actually reminds me a lot of the lens I have on my Gh5 and my favorite lens, which is the 12-60 f2.8-4. And whilst it's going to be a bit wider than this at the short end and is certainly not going to have the same level of zoom, it's a good all-rounder that should do pretty much everything I need to do in here making my content. Add on top of that a lot of the video-centric features for pro users, including anamorphic. It hasn't got shutter angle yet, but Panasonic have said that's coming in the future. It really does feel, though, like a natural upgrade for the Gh5 for me. Now, as I have said earlier, I am not a pro video user. I am just someone who makes content like this, and a semi-pro photographer is what I would class myself as well. But it really does feel that it could be the first camera I am happy to step up to and stay within that Panasonic menu system as well that I'm already used to. And now with all of the new lenses Panasonic have announced, L-mount actually feels like a system I can invest in as well, and it didn't feel that way before. So as a Gh5 user, I have to say the S5 makes a huge amount of sense. There are loads of videos online telling you how fantastic it is. There are loads of videos out there telling you why it's not, and you may as well go for the Sony A7 III, or you should go for the Sony S3 or R4, etc. There are loads of other fantastic cameras out there. But as someone who is in the MFT system, I look at the S5 and it just makes sense. The S1 and the S1H didn't, but the S5 really does. So that's why I think it is the perfect upgrade for me as a Gh5 user. Now, whilst I honestly think the S5 is the perfect upgrade for me right now, and I really want to jump into it, I am not ordering one. And the reason I'm not ordering one is I want to hold back and see if Panasonic actually release a GH6, because the Gh5 has been so good to me. I'd love to go full frame, but it is going to mean me selling everything I've got and starting again. And if I could just have a closer step towards full frame without actually having to change the full system, I could really be very, very tempted. And for instance, if we could have a GH6 with proper autofocus, so phase detect and contrast, because it is worth mentioning that S5 does not have phase detect. It still has Panasonic's contrast-based autofocus. And I will just say something on that actually. There's a reason I didn't really mention that earlier, because to me it's not important. If that autofocus was important, I wouldn't be using any of the cameras in front of me, because we all know what the autofocus is like on the Panasonics. It's not terrible, but it isn't something I'd rely on. I'm actually recording this video with the autofocus on the Sony. However, I wouldn't do that on the Panasonic. I would manually focus. So for me, the autofocus isn't a major factor. However, if we could have a Gh5 with phase detect autofocus, higher megapixel sensor, 24, 26 megapixel, dual ISO, much better low light performance, that really could be the ideal step while staying inside the existing lens system. Get towards that 14 stops of dynamic range, even if it's not the same as the S5 or the S1 or S1H. Get closer to it than I am now. And then I would keep the Gh5, and maybe we could have an upgraded G10 instead of a G9 with that. If we had a pair of these cameras, a stills based model and a video centric model, I'd be really tempted to stick with the Gh5 for most of my video content because it's almost perfect, and maybe an upgrade to a G10 with all of those features, or a Gh6 with those features and use that for my stills photography. So I do think that whilst if I went full frame, the S5 I would buy tomorrow, a upgrade to the Gh5 could keep me happy for another 2 to 3 years. And that is why I have not jumped out and ordered it today. Now, I do have to say, I am pining to try an S5 like a love-struck teenager. Honestly, to stop myself hitting that button has been so difficult the last couple of days, because I really want to do it. And the fact that Panasonic are bundling in either that Sigma lens, or you have the audio unit on the top as part of early orders as well, makes it even better deal right now. But I'm going to miss out on that, and I'm going to see what happens and see if Panasonic continue with the MFT system, because they have said it is still an extremely important part of their ecosystem. You know, and the Gh5 is probably the best selling camera Panasonic have ever had. It's that simple. So let's see what happens. So overall, the moral of this is, as a G9 and a Gh5 semi-pro user, creator, I think if I wanted to go full frame, and I want to go, but if I was going full frame, it would be the S5 hands down. I wouldn't even think about it. I would be ordering the camera today. I wouldn't be looking at the Sony models. I would want to stay with Panasonic and do that, because I think it just makes sense. However, if you wanted to stay in this system like I do, because I have invested in it, I would hold off and see what the next versions of these cameras bring. And it might keep us happy for another 2 to 3 years. And that's where my thought process is. So that's why I haven't ordered one. Anyway, that is it for this video. I hope the information you guys have found helpful. It was really just an overview of what I use and what I do. I will update you guys in the future on any changes, whether Gh6 comes, G10, whether I end up actually hitting that button and ordering an S5. I would love to try one. I would give an arm to spend a day with one. If Panasonic are watching, please send me one to play with a day or two. I want to try it. Probably not a good idea for me, but please, I'd love to have a play with one. I think it's a fantastic release and it makes total sense. That's it for this video. If you found the content interesting, please do hit that subscribe button, and don't forget to hit the little bell next to it as well. On a Sunday night on this channel, I go live at 10 PM UK or 5 PM Eastern time. However, it is no longer on this channel. It is on my second channel, where I have now set that up, and that is going to be where I do all the live streams. If you're interested in joining me on the live streams, Sunday night UK time 10 PM, Sunday night Eastern time 5 PM. There's a link to the other channel in the description of this video. Check that one out as well. That's it for this one. Thank you for watching, and I will release another video again soon.